We'll start off with quick introductions and just run down the line, and then I'll kind of frame up the panel and we'll get rolling. I'm Robert Savoy. I'm the chair of the fintech practice at McGlinchey Stafford, and my focus is regulatory compliance and legal compliance for lending and payments-related companies.
Hi, I'm Kenzie Mexican. I am the Deputy Chief Compliance and Risk Officer at a bank local here called FinWise Bank. We're a sponsor bank in the fintech space, and I have been in various compliance and risk-related roles in banking for 20 years. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ryan Wiggins. I am a VP of Product at Mercury. Mercury is a banking service, particularly for entrepreneurs in the US, but also increasingly some personal consumer side as well.
Hi, I'm Pravesh Rijal. I'm the Chief Data and AI Officer at Cross River. We hopefully are a common name in fintech space. We are a New Jersey chartered bank. And at the bank, I lead data, AI, and quantitative strategies. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Hi, folks. I'm the head of product at Affirm. We are a company that was founded by Max Levchin. We're a consumer lending company. We work with a lot of fintechs that are present in this room. We are on this mission to reinvent credit from the ground up and provide more value, both for merchant partners as well as on the consumer side.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, everybody. When we talked about the panel in advance of the conference with Peter and the Spring Labs team, I think the goal was to get companies that are leaders in the space to talk about how they're using AI now, not regulatory concerns, not potential use cases, but how are they actually using that live and in the market. And so I think what we're going to do for the panel is we're going to go through and talk first about sort of how are the companies using this internally and what are some of the AI uses that they are currently seeing within their businesses. And we'll just give everybody a chance to kind of go through some of those examples that we talked about in advance. And then we're going to go through a few different topics and areas of financial services that are more less about internal operations and more about external operations, and then go through sort of a curated list of that. So, Vishal, do you want to kind of start us off and talk about, I know you've talked before about productivity and different things that Affirm has used in terms of how you use AI. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, happy to. So one of the key things as we started to see this age of AI dawn upon us was how does a regular product manager or a designer use it to design better products for a consumer. So just to give a little bit of context, we have about 25 million active customers across US, Canada, and the rest of the globe. And we have about 350,000 merchants in our network. So we are operating at scale. And one of the key things that we put a lot of premium on is how do we get feedback from our network, from our customers, both consumers and merchants, to be able to make better decisions. So one of the things that the product managers have started to do, instead of writing long SQL queries to query the database and look at what are customers saying about us, we have an internally built AI tool that is gleaning all sorts of feedback loops, from Reddit threads to customer complaint tickets to everything in the middle, and providing the product manager a very easy access to design better products by asking, what are my top customer complaints for X area? Can you tell me more? It's conversational in nature. So that's like a very specific use case. But even building on top of that, our designers, most of them don't have a technical degree, but they have started to now prototype with Figma Make, another partner of ours, to be able to actually prototype using our app. We have a consumer app, and just vibe coding and saying, could you animate this screen into that screen? Can you change this button into that? And they're producing high quality prototypes that used to take probably months, and they're doing it in a matter of hours. And they're actually leading the charge, showing actually our front-end engineering team on how this could be done better. So those are like developmental use cases. And on the flip side, our service agents, just like many of the companies I'm speculating here, are using chatbots as well as voice AI to contain cases so that they can actually become more productive and only handle the more intricate and more complex use cases, right? So across the spectrum, from development to actually operations, we are seeing huge, tremendous gains by using AI tools.
And Kenzie, do you want to kind of take that from the opposite perspective? I mean, you're at a bank. You've dealt with compliance your whole career, as you said. I mean, how is the bank deploying that? Because sometimes banks have different views than fintechs, like Affirm.
Yeah, we were just talking in the room before this that my take on AI is a little bit more structured approach. We're kind of dipping our toe in. These guys are swimming in the AI models. And at FinWise, when we were looking for a fraud monitoring AML tool, all of the traditional bank tools out there don't fit our model. And so we had to look at the non-traditional models. And we are currently using and integrating a AI fraud detection money laundering tool, which we've been really happy with, and we're learning and guiding our way through that. It's all about the data feed in, as he was stating, and making sure that you know where that legacy data comes from. And there's a parent-child structure for all of our partners that integrates into the system. It will actually identify and link the fraud across multiple partners. So a lot of our partners get hit with the same fraud ring, and we can, in the system, link those together and do one investigation and file one SAR if necessary. So that has actually really helped decrease the false positive ratio that you get in the transaction monitoring space as well. With the machine learning feedback loop, it's learning consistently of what is actually fraud, what's not. It's really innovative, really new. We're helping design the tool and the product to really work for what we do in this area, and it's really exciting.
Pravesh, you talked a little bit when we were prepping about sort of CRB rolling out a lot of, AI agent use cases internally. Can you talk about that, which is a little different, I think, than what Kinsey was talking about?
Yeah, so from, again, being on the bank seat, our approach on adoption has also been very structured. And the way we kind of have approached it is we want some things that are efficiency driving, productivity driving, but with a heavy focus on without changing our security and governance stance. So things like even GPT, like normal chat tools, we have developed in-house with our own semantic layer and kind of rolled it out, everything built within Cross River's virtual private cloud to maintain the security posturing that we have. Things like API ecosystems where all the developers in the company could access and create tools that have AI capability, but creating API ecosystem so that on the back end we could guardrail them and control them within our governance framework. So we've done that. Also different vibe coding tools, as Vishal mentioned, that those have been rolled out. In terms of like pure agentic, we have deployed, say, research assistant type agents or agentic frameworks that people use today. There are also kind of use cases around agentic AI use cases which improve productivity and efficiency in the compliance that we are doing. So it's been more like mass adoption, scaffold your governance hand in hand with adoption and go from there.
Ryan, you want to close us out on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I just like put this in a broader context, which is, I think I saw a stat last week, which is that 70% of people 18 to 50 are using ChatGPT weekly. And we rolled out, a ChatGPT Enterprise within our company. 80% of the company uses it, and the average person sends 15 messages a day. There is like no individual expert that could answer that many questions. And so what we're seeing is really leaning into the technology around how do we think about just running the company using this new technology. I mean, classic example is how many intranets have existed where you have to go like find the piece of information. We just plug that into ChatGPT. You need to know your vacation policy. You can ask it, and it will link it back to you at the source. And so we're thinking about it for our customers, but also internally with operations and finding a ton of efficiencies in that space.
So I think that's so interesting because, Vishal, I'm going to turn this back to you in a second. One of the things we were talking about that I think is so interesting across a lot of different clients is sort of the shift away from, and we were actually talking about it with some folks at lunch earlier today, just sort of organically, is the shift away from Google search, right, to using AI to sort of inform what you do and sort of agentic commerce in that way and moving towards that. And Vishal, I know you talked a little bit about sort of pre-customer, right? How are you using AI? Because your role as a buy now, pay later, you're talking about interfacing with customers and how does AI shift whether and how customers find you, how they find out about financial services products. Because if somebody's not using a search engine, right, and they're not using Google, they're using AI to ask questions, to find things. And when you bury that, it's a big shift in terms of e-commerce. I mean, how do you all react to that? How do you think about that? How do you use AI in that regard?
Yeah, and so just to paint the bigger picture of where we think commerce is heading, there's a lot of, I would say, things being written about agentic commerce that we are still figuring out. So that's like step one. But what we know is that when consumers are using an LLM, they're actually not just using it as a better search, they're actually using it as an advisor. They're actually using it as a consultant. So what we see for shopping, if you break down the journey, is like, I want a particular item, I want it at the best price, I want to know how others have used it and talk about it, I want to know where it can be bought, and then what is the best way to buy it. The last part is where we play already, and the fun thing is, if you ask your favorite LLM, what's a honest way to purchase something, Affirm just pops up because we don't charge late fees. LLMs know that. We don't charge compounding interest, and LLMs also know that. It's not that we are trying to, quote unquote, feed the algorithm. They have already scouted and understood, what Affirm does and why is it a better way to pay. Now, the one thing that we are building towards is working with all of these different agentic commerce protocols to ensure and enable that Affirm is surfaced when customers are looking for the best deal. So imagine if you were going to ask your favorite LLM, it's like, I want to buy this Nike sneaker in this size when it drops below this particular price point, and I want to do a 0% APR. That entire workflow will be enabled with products like Affirm, and we are very proud to say that we have partnerships that enable us to be ubiquitous no matter where shopping is occurring. And in this case, when everyone will have a PhD level person in their pocket to actually advise them of what to buy, where to buy it from, and what's the best way to buy it with, Affirm will be at the forefront of that.
Well, I think it's really interesting. I'm going to step out of being moderator just for a second, but it'll be very brief. But one of the interesting things is we've actually had clients come find the firm because they've gone to AI and said, we need a fintech regulatory attorney or we need a fintech regulatory counsel. I have no idea why that happens. We certainly are not sophisticated in the way that you're talking about optimizing that. But it really is fascinating when you think about you're trying to find an attorney, and that's, it's a different world of commerce, but a similar world of commerce nonetheless. And it's really fascinating to have people that reach out to us as a law firm and say, we went and talked to ChatGPT and they recommended we talk to you. It's been an interesting development totally outside of that world to see, but it's going to impact us a lot. So let's talk a little bit about sort of customer application and account creation, right? You talked about agentic commerce and how people find you, but let's transition a little bit to now you have a customer, they're interfacing with you directly. And Ryan, I'm going to turn this over to you because you've talked about use of AI internally in this regard, application flow, how you handle that. Can you just maybe give everybody a little bit of context about what it is that Mercury does a bit more, and then they can kind of frame your use of AI in that regard, if that's okay?
Yeah, totally. So where I'd start with is Mercury is really a financial services product for businesses to really hold deposits and make kind of the critical payments, card spend, and accounting workflows that you need to do as a business. We support a couple 100,000 customers, particularly focused on tech industries or online bank or online businesses that primarily are not cash-based. And we've started to think a lot about the experience as a technology company. Just how do we build every experience and improve every experience with AI? And one of those places is our onboarding process. And so, as a business that's trying to provide banking services online first, we take applications. People come in and fill in applications, and we review every application with a human, the same way that you would at a bank branch. But those humans, and particularly with the growth we've seen and the volume we've seen, there's a lot of work for them to do. And the tools that they use are often very similar to like a piece of paper you're filling out that you actually have to go fill in information. You have to extract stuff from the application to put it in. And so we've really tried to bring an AI layer into that experience for the internal agents that are making decisions about applications. Things like how can we summarize what the application, information about the application to signal the risk? Is this someone who is a US founder, has existing businesses on Mercury, or are they the first international founder we've ever seen from some small island nation that maybe signals a bit more risk and we should be a little more thoughtful about it? So things like that. Things like, how can we extract information from documents that are provided? When someone provides their ID or formation document, rather than have a human actually have to go like type in information, put that information into the database, we just extract that. We're now using LLMs to do OCR. And so what we found is we're actually able to scale quite a bit faster because we're able to unlock what those humans can do with applications. And as we've grown, we've been able to kind of keep our headcount the same, but be able to do more of the same reviews and keep the same kind of quality bar that we have for making sure that we're making the right decisions and making sure we're not letting bad actors in.
And Vishal, Vishal, do you mind if I cut it over to you for a second and talk about targeted offers a little bit? And are you all using AI in the same way in that regard?
Yeah, so one of the key things that we are able to do versus traditional payment methods is we are vertically integrated all the way from bank partners to the merchant network. So we are data preserving, fully integrated network. And in that world, one of the key value props that we offer to consumers is that we can hyper-personalize the offer. So imagine, again, in the previous case, someone wants to buy Nike sneakers. Instead of 0%, they want to finance it over 6 months. It's an expensive, maybe, sneaker. We now know what people's preferences are because they're not one size fits all. Some people are very risk averse and interest averse, and they just want to pay it off in 4 payments, so pay in 4. And some people like to finance it over a longer period of time. It also depends on what they're buying. A couch is different than a sneaker. And so what we have developed is an in-house technology called Adapt AI that adapts to the customer's needs and preferences based on other parts of the network that we've seen them at, because 95% of our network is repeating with us within a year, which is a crazy stat in terms of stickiness. Our TPUs are 6, so 6 times a year we see people come, so once every 2 months, and the power users are coming to us much more frequently. So with that all data and with AI tools, we're able to actually hyper-personalize what a customer is actually in the market for, and then the merchants can actually understand that and subsidize that deal on their side so that the conversion is much more specific. So they can say, for this audience, I would like to subsidize this particular term because that's the audience that I'm interested in. So think about an abandoned cart scenario, or think about a reactivation of a churned user scenario. So all of those things previously were much more blunt forced, but now with the advent of targeting and hyper-personalizations through AI and ML models, we are able to actually meet that demand and price curve in a much more efficient way than before.
So can I ask you to continue and talk and transition a little bit? Sometimes I feel like I can't come to an AI conference without at least talking about AI and underwriting. Maybe that's just because I'm a credit compliance lawyer at heart. But you know, I know that Affirm has done machine learning for a long time in underwriting in that regard. And so Kinsey, I'm going to turn over to you in a second because I want to get the bank's view, and you have a number of fintech partners. I mean, can you talk about sort of Affirm's historical view on the use of AI and machine learning in that context as well? Because it goes along with what you're talking about in terms of targeted offers.
For sure. And like the background of Affirm, where we came from, is actually quite interesting and important to know, because our product is actually real-time underwriting, which is built on ML models starting 13 years ago, and we have underwritten over 50 million customers and accounts. So with that amount of data, we have developed sophisticated models that can actually predict what the repayment history of any person is. And our delinquencies are 2.4%. That's what we released in the last quarterly earnings, which is way lower than your average consumer lending product. And with AI, so when we talk about AI, we've been using AI because ML is a kind of AI. But more recently, what we're trying to understand is how can Gen AI help us underwrite even better, not to touch the ML models because we like where they are. We like UDAP as well. And we are very good with not stepping the line over where the ML models need to be. So we have hyper-optimized those. But take an example of a new customer that we haven't seen before. Today, we have to seek out different sources of data to be able to actually underwrite them. We call them thin file users. In a forward-looking world, we are trying to understand whether we can glean that data in a much more efficient way, take that unstructured data today into more structured data tomorrow that can feed the ML models. So not to replace the ML models, but can we actually tweak the data plumbing underneath the curve so that the ML models actually get better data, and then the more data that they see, the better that they get. So we're trying to reinforce our current existing AI with more AI that is now emergent. But for 13 years, our company has been AI native.
And Kinsey, I don't know if you want to talk about that. I mean, we talked a little bit when we were just prepping before the panel about, you have a number of partners and they're trying to do sort of interesting things in that regard. But as a bank, you have different obligations, and, even with the change in federal administration, there's still laws on the books and state attorney generals. And, how do you approach that in regard to sort of giving your fintech partners flexibility to roll out live use cases in an area where there is real federal law in terms of credit underwriting?
Right. So a lot of our partners do use supervised machine learning in their credit underwriting. And obviously, fintechs want to approve their customers as quickly as possible. They want to make sure that they're detecting fraud. They want that person to repay. And we've come a long way in this area. We do safeguard it. We can't roll out and do all the exciting stuff that Varesh is talking about. However, it is exciting in this space to be at a place where they are integrating these and we are targeting the consumers. We're deflecting fraud. We're increasing repayment, repeat customers. It can identify things like loan stacking, fraud indicators, and kicks those out and continues to allow fast movement through the process in underwriting. Also, these models prevent disparate impact and are regularly reviewed by a third party. So we can't take that human element out because, again, it's the data feed in and then making sure that you're managing your models and that you're not doing that in a silo, that you have a third party coming in and testing that, making sure the input and the output is what you expect.
And that was when I presented here last year. We talked about, I think, the CFPB and Zach, the director of the Utah AI department, who I know spoke again today. And I went and listened to it, and it was great. We talked a lot about how you deal with the regulatory concerns in that regard. And I think, the CFPB at that time, it's different than it is today, but it had previously issued a circular interpreting the adverse action disclosure requirements in terms of explainability and the requirements. And that's, obviously the scrutiny from the Bureau is different now than it was a year ago this time, but it was an interesting discussion, I thought, last year at this conference to go through what regulatory expectations are, and especially when, just from my view as outside counsel, when Chopra did here's the roadmap to the states to pick up when I inevitably am no longer at the Bureau in January. It's going to be an interesting thing to see where the states pull back on that, and like you talk about the discussion that you have with them. But I did a panel a couple of weeks ago on the 67 pieces of guidance that the CFPB threw in the garbage can, and so we went through one of them, and that was one of them, along with a number of other things that impacts that. But let's talk a little bit about sort of existing customers, and Ryan, I'll go to you to talk about this. I mean, you've talked about, earlier about, hey, here's how we can use AI in processing applications for accounts. Okay, well, you're through that, right? You've got customers live. How are y'all deploying AI currently with your existing customers in the context of your business?
Yeah, totally. I'll talk about 3 ways, but maybe the baseline, and I promise this is not a Mercury ad, but the way we think about Mercury and the service we offer is that we are differentiated by the experience. We really want to build great software that people can see the difference in and feel the difference in. And if you don't believe me, you can go to demo.mercury.com and you can see it. That's my only ad for today. But we're really thinking about it in 3 ways. First is the accounting workflow. Every business has accounting needs, and one of the critical parts of that is you have to categorize your transactions. I don't know if you guys do this internally at your companies, but it is a painful thing to do. And so we've built automation for our customers to allow them to automatically categorize transactions based on the information we have. And then we use a feedback loop with the user to say, hey, were these categorizations correct? And then do you want to upload them to your accounting software like QuickBooks and stuff like that? That is saving a ton of time for people, and people are really loving it because they start to enhance their data once they start to use Mercury. On top of that, once you have categories, you can start to deliver insights. And so we're thinking a lot about how we summarize what has happened in your account since you last visited. Hey, you have a recent transaction from Google Ads that seems much bigger than your spend last month. And so we're delivering and building these sort of insights proactively and delivering them to users. And finally, one of the places that actually just launched today, I'm really excited about it, is we are deploying this in customer support where we have a chatbot, you can go talk to it, it escalates to a human, But that chatbot is going to get more capable over time. It already has all of our help center data. It can already take some basic actions for you. If you're in an urgent rush and you need to freeze your card, and you tell the chatbot that, it can go in and freeze your card. Now, how we've tried to think about this is we're really trying to be precise and make sure that we're delivering high quality services. So we aren't doing things like allowing AI bot to create a card or to spend money or things like that. We're really thinking about how do we give the consumer control to take actions that really protect them and give them what they need. And so those are maybe just 3 of the things that we have live today. We've got a lot more in development, but I'm really excited about those.
And how do you think about iterating on that, right? I mean, you speak of a caution, right, where you want to do things that you're very confident that the AI will get right. But what is that like in-house, or inside the company to talk about, looking at how the AI handles that and then expanding over time? Or how do your software folks think about that?
I mean, the short is we spend a ton of time prototyping. Like, I can't tell you how many transactions I've categorized myself, had to check a categorization list. So we spend a bunch of time in the processing, really building our confidence in it. The second thing we do is we set up what we call evals. Evals is a system that basically allows OpenAI to query your data and determine if it is following a pattern that is expected. So it's basically like a quality review, but an automated quality review. And so we set those up when we launch things. And finally, we're talking to customers all the time. I mean, basically the first 1,000 customers that went through any of these features got an email from me saying, how'd it go? And what would you like to be better? And those little things, are getting a lot better. The final thing is, this is one of the coolest things with this technology, is that most of the iteration can be done by the prompt. You can actually update the text that you send the message with. You don't have to go build a new system. You don't have to go build a new database. You can actually just tweak it and start to see, are customers happy with this? Or, do we get more false positives? Do we get more changes of the category? And that's some of the ways that we're actually, very closely monitoring it, but actually are feeling quite confident in the quality that we're getting from that.
That's awesome. Pravesh, let me turn to you, and maybe we'll kind of close out on this topic. When we were prepping a bit, you talked a lot about uses internally and that you were trying to give tools sort of across the bank, right? Internal tools where you felt comfortable with your sort of security and governance standard and all that stuff, and different ways in which people across the bank, but in different roles, could use that. Can you talk about that a little bit? And I know that we're trying to think about different things in terms of payments and lending and sort of how companies are using that. One of the ones that you said that sort of made my ears perk up was, building a credit memo from an analyst, or, for secondary market transactions, being able to use AI to look at loan performance, right, of the bank's loans, and how does it perform, and sort of informing the back end on potential underwriting impacts and different things. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen internally? You've got your people using the AI, and tell us about that.
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, our focus has really been on efficiency and productivity enhancement. We are coming up, actually this month in 2 weeks, we will be launching internally a agentic AI studio, which is a no-code, low-code space where everybody in the bank who has access can go and create agentic AI solutions or bots to do whatever workflows that they would want, of course. Again, pretty much in a controlled, governed fashion. We have inventory registries, et cetera. We have monitoring in place and guardrails in action. So that is coming out. I think that would be a very strong game changer for us in terms of streamlining our internal plumbing and really gaining bandwidth and internal efficiency. So that's the platform that I think we chatted about. The capital market use case that you mentioned is pretty interesting, and maybe I'll touch upon that a little bit. So Cross River is also a structured product house. We market make in the consumer ABS space. We bring deals to market. We also underwrite and deploy capital on a lot of esoteric structures that we structure ourselves. A lot of times when we are bringing an esoteric deal to market, the triggers, covenants on the waterfall is tied to economics. And one thing that we need to do is, it's a very bespoke deal. We need to go through hundreds of pages of legal document, figure out what are the clauses that kind of impacts the economics, and then kind of put a data-powered monitoring system to kind of track the collateral performance, etc. And that used to be a lot of like calories spent setting that system up end to end. So what we figured out was an agentic system that could basically take the covenant document, read it, identify data elements, create the backend plumbing, and really go all the way to setting up all of the what do you call that, the MLOps, DevOps kind of situation, and give us a front-end dashboard, all within, going from weeks of time to like less than an hour. So that's the kind of live use case that we have today on the capital market side of house. We're using agentic AI systems to help us to increase our throughput and create bandwidth when it comes to monitoring the deals that are bespoke.
Well, I think we're about out of time, but I think I can speak for all lawyers everywhere and say I'm happy to hear that none of you have developed AI to replace lawyers yet, but maybe that'll be next year, and everyone will be cheering you on if you do. I think we're out of time for questions, but we'll be kind of over to the side if anybody wants to come up and ask a question or anything like that. But let's do a round of applause for the panelists.